Welcome to this week's episode of Dawn Breaks, and I am so happy to welcome Bethany, who's joining me today. So welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me there.
Oh, no, it's an absolute pleasure. It really is. How do we find you today? How are you?
Yeah, doing really well. So, we're in a little bit of a lockdown ourselves right now, but, I guess this is kind of worldwide right now for everybody.
Yeah, and where are we talking to you? Where are you?
I'm in Canada, so that's Alberta. I'm originally from the UK though myself, so...
Okay, yeah. I was just thinking for listeners, it's good for them to know what's going on, because obviously I'm talking about the UK a lot of the time, but yeah, really good to connect with you from the other side of the world. So you know already, Bethany, a bit about the podcast and how it works. What I like to do is take people back to a time when things were really difficult, potentially when you might have been feeling very low or a bit hopeless, and ask you to describe a time that might have felt like that for you. I wonder if there's a time that you'd be happy to share with us.
Yeah, definitely. My hopeless place was actually when I became a widow. I became a widow in October of 2018.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I was actually a stay-at-home mom at the time, and I had two little boys who were 3 and 5 years old. And it was a big journey for me, kind of going through all of this stuff and having to relearn about myself. I felt pretty much very isolated, that a lot of people didn't understand the circumstances that I was in. I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. And a lot of the times I felt that a lot of people felt sorry for me, and I didn't actually like that aspect of it, because I felt very victimized by it. And what I didn't really realize is that I actually have a very strong mentality, and I realized that through going through this. I felt a lot of, obviously, despair. Too many people hadn't gone through this, and it was really hard to sort of relate to the everyday person and how they can sort of understand the circumstances that I was under. And I felt very anxious and very angry as well, just because it was a very low place and a hopeless place for me at the time. It was sort of like a big banner over my head, now what? Now what does my life look like? What does my boy's life look like? And a lot of the anger, I would say, came from the having a lot of responsibility. So for me, it was empowering to sort of be that only person to kind of do that for my boys, but it was also terrifying at the same time.
Right. I completely understand.
It put a fire under me, though. I find for a lot of people, when they go through something pretty tragic, whether it's for their own health, their own mental health, or somebody else's, and you kind of get to this sort of fork in the road, you basically have a decision to make. And you can either go up, or you can either stay in the basement floor. And I pretty much right there and then knew I wanted happiness for the boys and myself. And it was like I couldn't sit in pain and misery. I knew I had to let myself grieve.
Of course.
That wasn't sort of, it wasn't sort of okay, that's it, I'm done, I can, move on. It came in waves. And but the majority of it, I would say, would be, it was I needed to pick myself up and actually do something with it. And I realized, thinking back about this, I actually had sort of 3 key areas that sort of got me through it, I would say. So that was sort of my lowest of low.
I'm so sorry. It's such a difficult thing to speak about, and for so many people as well. I imagine lots of people don't know what to say in a situation like yours. And you described there that feeling of I can't remember the word that you used exactly, but it felt like you were describing feeling pitied in some way and rejecting that, almost feeling like, no, I'm going to be in control of what I can be in control of, and it's really important for me to be here for your children, and it's very, very difficult, isn't it? Because I think you're intensely experiencing these emotions, but other people have feelings about what's happened for you, and what do you do with that, and is it even your responsibility? Which I think it isn't in that situation. Your responsibility is just to you and your family. But thank you for sharing, because it's incredibly tough, and I imagine still incredibly tough to talk about.
Yeah, you mentioned, definitely, I think there was a big one there. There's control. Control is, I think when you hit the nail on the head there with that one, is that when people, I think, try and sort of, I don't know how I'd be able to live sort of myself after having gone through that. And when people say that, it's almost like a feeling like they're taking that control away from you, and you've already had that sort of physically happen. That it's almost like you feel like you should be sort of emotionally shoved into a corner, and like you should feel really, really sad and like not get yourself back together ever again, and like this is like completely ruined your life and all this stuff. And I think just those tapes, just that notion of itself is very it was very demoralizing, I think, for myself. Like it made me feel like I was even smaller and I had less power, and I think I've always been that type of person. Like if someone says you can't do something, I'm very much like, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
I don't pick the easiest roads to go on. Obviously running a business and stuff too, right? Like it's a bit of a windy road, and I find that sort of been in my life as well, as very, very windy, but I always seem to find my path. And make it great for myself.
I love that. And I also love what you've just shared there, because I think that's such an important perspective for people to hear. In the moment, I think people panic, they don't know what to say, they don't want to say the wrong thing, but actually it's really useful for people to hear that actually isn't helpful to say, I don't know what I'd do if I was you, because that isn't empowering. It's not supporting you in the way that you potentially need or want, and maybe you'd be an expert in what should people say. I say to people, say I don't know what to say, but I want you to know I'm here for you. If you don't know what to say, be honest about that. But that idea is really important, I think, about just thinking about the impact that those words are going to have. Even if it's being empathetic and being sensitive and careful, you do need to think really thoughtfully about where that's going to leave you and your ability to move on. Like you say, obviously, of course you're not going to do that immediately. Of course that's going to take time. The grieving process is huge, and it is long, and it goes in waves, but at the same time you have to be helped to pick up the pieces in the moment, and that sort of is really essential, maybe, and that's probably as well where your head goes to in the moment, is to sort of like what needs to be done, and maybe the empathy is helpful later, possibly.
When you say, what do people really say, when I kind of look back and I think about it, and I'm also teaching this to sort of my boys as well, that when people are using better words, more encouraging, like you're so strong,
right,
you're such an inspiration, you're such a powerful person, like things like that, that's what builds you up, versus someone saying to you, I feel so sorry for you. Like you understand the tone, like everything is different, right? And same with my boys. I've noticed that too. Like if they start to sort of go into this victim mode of, I don't have a dad or things like that, I actually encourage them to look at what they do have and what they're happy about right now. And that's kind of what goes into sort of the three things that I wanted to talk a little bit about, sort of the journey of how I got myself there. And it wasn't really an intentional thing. I wasn't like oh, let's sit down and let's figure out like what. It just sort of happened. And I think part of it is sort of my personality, and my mindset at the time, because like I said, when you hit rock bottom, you get to a point of a decision, like right away.
I do agree with what you're saying there, because I think you get a certain amount of clarity. Maybe it becomes really clear, you know, what needs to happen, and what you, and the things that maybe felt like they mattered before possibly don't matter as much, and it becomes quite simple in the moment that is really, really difficult. And I absolutely, you know, honor what you're saying there. I think it's really important to feel empowered and not disempowered, because all the time that we feel like something is happening to us, which we have every right to feel in the moment when really difficult, painful, awful things happen, but all the while we feel like something's happening to us, we sort of lose that power, don't we, rather than sort of stepping back into what can I control, what can I change, how can I sort of impact what's going on so that I feel safe and secure and as nurtured as I can be right now.
It's I think it was massive for like my boys to feel that as well, because again, it's a sense of safety and security being ripped away from them too. For myself, it was more like sort of what now, finances, everything. Like it was sort of like I didn't even know where to start, like what aspect of my life, what it looks like. You know, when you marry somebody, you expect till death do you part, but not that early. You know, my partner at the time was 37 years old. Like that's early for someone to, and I was 32. No, sorry, I think I was 31.
Right, gosh.
I think I was 32. But it's early, and it's not heard of in sort of our age group, right? It was like I said, it was a bit of a shock to kind of move myself forward. Like I was like, I really have to do something, because like the big part for me was my boys depended on it.
Of course.
For the security and the stability for themselves. Like they don't need a mom that's going to fall apart. And you know, they've suffered enough, you know, in a loss, right? So I wanted to sort of share kind of what helped me sort of move forward, if that's okay.
Of course. Let's move on to those, because I'm really interested to hear, you know, what supported you the most during that time.
I think the beginning part, like when I first think of like the first few weeks, the first few months, of course it's like a blur. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of aspects you have to sort of sort out, because when you obviously combine a life with somebody, there's a lot of different I's and T's and things that you have to cross and dot and all that kind of stuff, right? So it was kind of a blur in that sense, and you're trying to sort of get over the shock of it. But the main thing I thought of in that time was, I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy. And it was like my mission to not live at the bottom, but to realize I had a long journey to go, but my attitude had to change right away.
Right.
I couldn't sort of live there and think, oh, well, you know, let's just give up, you know, like that wasn't an option for me. I'm like, there's got to be a better way than to feel this and to live this, right? So the first part was I sort of had a persistent, healthy mindset for myself, and I actually almost taught myself that. I already knew I had a very like, I'll show you type of personality. Like if someone said, oh, you'll never do this, or you never could be that, or whatever, my mentality was like, well, I'm going to do it, and I'll prove you wrong.
Right.
So that was sort of my first notion in my head. And I made sure every day I woke up and I listened to very positive like YouTube videos, people that sort of had been through a lot worse, inspiring like mentor people that were talking about like mindset growth. And I almost binge listened to that like every morning, and it got me out of bed, because it was like telling me things like, you know, you could be in the worst pain ever, but you can actually do something about it. Like don't feel sorry for yourself. Like you have the control, you have like the motivation. And it got me out of bed like every day.
Right. That's powerful.
It was, and it pushed me, because as much as like it's easy, it's actually easier to go back to bed and to, you know, give up and feel anxious and like, well, what's the point? But it's harder to get up, brush your teeth, have a shower, and have to deal with sort of the kids on top of that, and they still need to go to school, and they still need to be looked after, and they still need a mom in their life. So that was sort of the first few weeks, I would say, to a few months of dealing with something pretty bad. And then as I sort of progressed, I thought I need some counseling. I need to sort of figure out like the tapes moving forward, like how do I sort of recondition myself? So I did quite a bit of grief counseling for myself and for my eldest at the time, because he was 5.
Right.
My youngest was 3, and I don't think he wasn't really even talking as much, so we couldn't really understand. But we did a bit of, you know, family stuff, counseling, and I hired a personal coach for myself.
Right.
And I worked with her for over a year, and that really helped me kind of see like where I was, like how I sort of got myself into that place in the first place, and going forward, like what was it going to look like for me? So that really helped, and you know, joining other groups and stuff as well. I've never sort of really found like anybody that's experienced the same thing as me, but I've been able along my journey to find people that have had the same type of feelings, like the lack of control, feeling disempowered or angered or things like that. And it's been quite sort of eye-opening for me that a lot of people, as much as we don't have the same experiences, we share sort of the same thread.
Yes.
And that is sort of something that I've held on to, is that other people can understand your experience, whether it's, you know, losing a child or losing a parent or losing a spouse or anything like that, or feeling, you know, disempowered. Sort of how do we regain our own control back in our lives that is manageable, and how do we sort of teach that to the younger generations that look up to us as well, because we definitely are an example.
Absolutely.
And for me, the big one was also being grateful in the worst of times. So that was sort of the number 2 aspect for me, was that as much as I thought, you know, this is probably the worst thing that could ever happen to me, it wasn't the worst thing in the world that could have happened. Like there's so many other people that have gone through, you know, various different things, and there's a lot of people that understand the pain. And I thought to myself, you know, there's only one life. We only have one life to live, and I want to make mine amazing and be a leader to my boys as well. So even just something as simple as like at dinner time, we usually do go around the table and ask what everyone's grateful for.
Love that.
So it teaches them, and they've been doing that since they were little. And they even ask us that now, like if we're driving or we're sitting at the table having dinner, they usually say like, you know, what are you grateful for today, mommy, and things. Aww. So it's nice, because even in the worst of times, I can get them to sort of think, and it's helped us too through like even this whole pandemic thing going on, because obviously, you know, a lot of people can sort of relate to this even just on that basis, like all over the world, is that you feel quite disempowered, that you're being sort of told what to do, where to go, you know. And it's you know, I already kind of had all these tools under my belt before this pandemic hit, because I kind of already experienced all this loss and sense of lack of control. And going into the pandemic, even teaching the boys, like, you know, when they've been taken out of school or they can't have friends over or things like that, it's like, well, I know we can't do that right now, but like, what can we do?
Right.
And what do we have control over? And, you know, trying to sort of make the best out of every situation has helped our family and our boys to feel like they actually have a say, or they have control over like the small things in their own life.
Yeah. You know? And that's huge, and huge for them as well, I think, to know that they have some power, know that they have some control over things, because I think when we're most devastated is when things feel like it's been taken out of our control, just like you've been describing. And also, again, you aligned with what's going on now with the pandemic. It's so many people are really struggling because they feel like things have been taken out of their hands. But you're right, there is this absolute attitude shift that we can do, and it doesn't have to be a big jump. You know, it's very hard when you're feeling very low. You can't jump up to feeling happy immediately, but you can just have little adjustments in kind of how you're feeling by thinking, well, actually, what can I do? Like, what can I make nice for myself? You know, maybe I can't do the things that I want to do, but I can do, you know, I can have a bath, or I can do a nice activity. I can video call my friend, or whatever it is that makes you feel good. There are things that we can do, and then you're living in a place of possibility as opposed to a place of lack, aren't you? And that is a completely different feeling in your body, and ultimately what you feel on the inside you're going to see more of on the outside, and I think that's so powerful. You know, you also mentioned there about coaching and counselling, and I think it really does make such an impact having space to make a plan after sort of a devastating experience. Like, how do you want the future to look like? What do you want life to look like moving forward? And you wanted your life to continue, you wanted to feel happy, you wanted to have this safe, nurturing space for your boys, and all of that's really important. And sometimes just having someone else there to reflect back and help you structure and put that plan into place can be really transformational. And that sort of coaching in that sense is slightly different to sort of therapy work or counselling, in that it kind of can help you structure and put in that plan, which potentially is what you maybe needed at that time, and what you're describing as needing at that time is a way to look forward and have steps to move forward and move, you know, out of a space that was really, really difficult and felt out of control.
Definitely. You hit a lot of points there that actually I was thinking in my head about that. It definitely becomes, and like it's got to get to a need. Like a lot of people say they want things in their life to change. They want to lose weight. They want to be happier. You know, wave a magic wand and give me that, right? But at the end of the day, it's when you hit a need, it's there's no question anymore. You're like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't live in this anxiety. I can't live in this depression. I can't live in this unhappiness or broken boundaries with other people, things like that. It reflects into so many different aspects. And for myself, when I think about why I did coaching, why I needed that for myself, it was a place where I needed somebody to reflect back to me what I wasn't seeing. Because the problem is, I think a lot of the times our ego gets in the way and we think, oh, I know what I'm doing. Or, you know, even if you're a therapist yourself or you're in the healing work yourself and you think, you know, oh, I don't need that. It kind of gives you a bit of a check because the thing is, we also have spots and areas that we're not looking at, and we may be teaching it to our children unknowingly. We may be, you know, having these issues, and it goes into your relationships, it goes into family life, and I needed somebody to see my own blind spots. So I'm like, there's something I'm not seeing, that, you know, I attracted this type of life. I attracted this before. I don't want this type anymore. I want to live a better life. So it was like, I looked at something and said, I want this life, but I don't know how to get there.
Right.
And I need that help. And at the end of the day, for me, the other part of it was having a purpose and waking up for that purpose and realizing I'm not perfect. I can't be perfect as much as I want to be perfect. And that's, I think a lot of us struggle with that, is this whole perfectionism of, even in motherhood, like, you know, I remember that with my first son, I had quite bad postpartum depression as well. And that was another low time in my life, but it was my expectations to be perfect, to understand and know it all. And you don't, it's like,
how can you?
Yeah, you're not given a guidebook on anything in life.
Any of this.
How to run a business, how to be a mom, how to grieve a loss, like none of this, like how to go through a pandemic. Like they all relate in some aspect, that we go into this sort of unknowing and blind, and we may not be seeing things that we're doing over and over again and wondering why we're getting the same results.
Right. I think you're so right as well about you need someone to reflect it back, because and you also said about, even if you work in the healing modalities, even if you work as a therapist, like I can't give myself the therapeutic support that I need. I can give myself self-care, and I know a lot of stuff and I have a lot of expertise, but the reality is when, you know, when I was having a really difficult time, I couldn't do that stuff for myself because I'm in it. You know, you need someone outside of yourself who can have an objective point of view, and also be able to say it, because sometimes we don't want to see it. You know, even if we do have a slight awareness of what we might be doing or repeating, or the patterns that we might be going through, we might not be ready to see it yet, and it takes that kind of work and consciously wanting to uncover what is it about my sort of subconscious patterns or things that I'm doing that is creating these results for me that I don't want. And I think that's really, really powerful and really important. It will be so useful, I think, for people to hear that.
Definitely. I think a lot of people, myself included, denial is a huge one, and the ego likes to get in the way and say, you're fine, you know, just keep going. And you're running this life on autopilot and wondering why you feel miserable inside. You know, it sometimes takes a break. Like, you know, something hard to happen for people to really check their ego and come out of the denial and be like, I actually need to do something about this because I can't continue like this. And there's a lot of people that live on autopilot for the rest of their lives because they're just sort of on a cruise control, you know,
a place of coping rather than a place of living, maybe.
Yeah, it's what's the word I've heard before? Surviving instead of thriving.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been so many really important things in what you've described in terms of your journey and the things that supported you, and I'm just really grateful to you for being so open and sharing, because I know it can be really difficult, and it of course it is different for everyone, but and it's very personal what supported you, but also really, really important to sort of visit that and see that journey, to see how far you've moved from that space of feeling not having control and this sort of devastating experience to kind of moving forward to where you are now. So tell us a little bit about, you know, where's this taken you? So these are the things that have really supported you in this process. Where's this taken you now in terms of what you're doing and your work that you're doing now?
It's inspired me. It's crazy to say that, but it's almost like given me a new life. Like,
Wow.
I'm happy to say that, you know, it's been 3 years now, and I've been actually in a very happy relationship for the last like 2.
Wow.
With a new partner, and we're creating, you know, a new family dynamic, and it takes time, obviously,
Of course.
you know. But right now, what I do myself is I also coach a lot of other women through difficult times in their life, because I understand the tools and the principles of what it takes to get over that, right? It made me get up every day and put a lot of time and effort into building memberships for the women and the moms that I help. A lot of the women I help suffer with anxiety and depression, postpartum depression, and you know, and I find a lot of it, like, because I'm in nutrition, right? I'm a nutritional consultant, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. When people say I can't lose weight, it's not a physical thing. It's like where people are stuck in their mindsets, and we level back to sort of their beginning and the tapes that they're hearing and the relationships they're in and what's blocking them from being able to have that happiness and to move forward. So I don't think people sort of realize, like, the work like that you put in, it changes everything.
Yeah.
It changes your entire outlook. And I'm in a very different place emotionally, mentally than I ever was. And even boundaries, like just like how much growth I've done in the last few years. Like it's amazing. Like I look back a year or two ago and I don't even feel like the same person I was.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. Like, it's such a journey. And I think a lot of people are afraid of change because it's uncomfortable, right? Nobody really wants to move. And again, the fear of like, well, what's it going to look like at the end result? And I understand that on one aspect, because if you do things too quickly sometimes, people are sort of like, oh, nope, that's too far. Like, I don't want to do that. So that's why when I coach with a lot of my women, we start at 6 months, because it takes quite a process for your brain to adjust to the changes. And then I start to say, like, look back and see, like, where were you like 3 months ago? Where were you 6 months ago or a year ago? And they're like, wow, like, you want to do it in a subtle way that you're not sort of triggering this, this defense, this royal guard in you, you know, the person that's sort of like, nope, don't want to change, you know, because that's what keeps us stuck.
Right.
Is that person that's like, you know, fearing anything different, whether it's good or bad.
Right. And it's fear that stops us, isn't it, with change? Because I feel like now I can speak about change being a really good thing in my life. And there's been some big changes and some changes that I did not want, and things, you know, at the time that I didn't want to happen. And you spoke about how your experience of losing your husband in one way has become an inspiration for building the life that you now want for yourself, kind of post that happening. And I absolutely love that, because I think it's so difficult for people to speak about this, you know, and it is really important that we still embrace life, and still important that we have the passion to get up every day, because there's something that we have the purpose to get up for. And you spoke about that earlier, and I think that that's so important, you know, after a sort of devastating experience, is to reconnect with yourself and find the things that are going to help you get back to a version of you that has passions and is lit up and has something incredible to share, because you now have this sort of amazing message to share with people, and it's coming out through the work that you do. You know, your pain has become your purpose, which ultimately means that there was a reason for it happening. You know, there was a reason for you going through that, and of course you would never have chosen it for yourself. However, something has come out of it which is really positive and really good, and now you're in a time, in an experience in your life that sounds completely transformed in such a short time span, which is just so heartwarming. And I'm just so happy for you that it can have turned around, you know, in such a short space of time, to somewhere where you feel in control, where you are happy with what you're doing, and you're in a family situation that feels good to you. And that's incredible.
It is. When I think about what you're saying there, I hear, what is your why? At the end of the day, you've got to, not everybody knows what it is, but it's the why comes from a place of a burning desire in you, that it makes you do something because it makes you cry inside, like in a way that makes you happy. What's going to motivate you to do something? And that's what I talk to people about when I talk about weight loss and things like that. Like I said, it's a physical thing. It's not, at the end of the day, you got to go through someone's mindset first and figure out what it is, like what's holding you back, like what's going to push you forward, basically. And for me, the why, I realized after a while, was I wanted to be happy, and I wanted my boys to be happy. Like, it was such a desire that it was like I wasn't going to stop anything getting in my way, because it was something I was so burning to have inside of me. And when I look back and I think how far I've come and what I've done and all the challenges and the journey that I've gone on myself, whether that's, you know, up in the sky or down, you know, crash down, it makes me cry, because it makes me happy of how far I've come and the life I've chosen, because I made one decision. Yeah. And like the most powerful, important decision almost, isn't it, of your experience, because that making a choice can change everything. And for you, it did. And that's just,
Yeah, it's giving me goosebumps. This, you know, you say about why, this podcast is definitely one of my whys. Like, these conversations blow me away so often, and I love what you shared there, because I just think, you know, there's people out there that I needed to hear this. There are people out there that need to hear this, and you have such a incredible, powerful, transformational story, and I'm so happy to be able to be part of the process of getting that out there to more people, because I think you've got so much good stuff to share that people can benefit from hearing. So thank you.
That's wonderful, because even in the last, you know, what you said, powerful, inspiring, people want to hear this, like that is what makes me do what I want to do, because it knows from my pain I can help other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? Because then it makes the pain worth it. You know, none of us want to experience pain at the time that it happens, but when there becomes a reason for it happening, when it happens in your life, that there's a purpose for it, and there's a place for it, and there's a strength that it then gives us, that means so much. And I completely understand what you mean about the sort of goosebumps, the feeling tearful, having some tears about it. It really does matter, doesn't it, that those really difficult things have a reason and give us so much strength and inspiration. Yeah,
that's what we're here for.
Beautiful. Love that. I love that. How can people connect up with you, Bethany, if they feel like, wow, this has really resonated with me, and they want to hear more about you and what you're doing? What's the best way for them to do that?
We have several different ways, but what I do like to offer is a free 15-minute sort of consultation for anybody that is struggling right now or needs a bit of guidance. So I can provide you there with that link, and then
Perfect.
People can book in a 15-minute call with me. But people can also go to my website, which is www.ndelish.com.
Love it. Okay. Yeah, that's great. So all of that information will be in the show notes for anyone listening, so you can access that really easily, and get in touch with Bethany if you want to. Are there any sort of last things that felt important and you haven't had a chance to say yet, or anything that you feel you want to share before we wrap up?
I think a lot of people can relate. As much as I know people think, wow, like her story is like completely different from like anything I've heard or I've ever heard or experienced. I think a lot of people can take nuggets out of this, and everybody, like I said, worldwide is being hit with the whole pandemic on this aspect, and your control is not taken away from you. You know, you have the power within you. You have your own, you know, environment that you can change all on your own. You don't need to change the world, but you can change definitely things at home, things within yourself, for sure, on a small level to help yourself.
I love that. You don't need to change the world. And we have so much control over what goes on, you know, what we take in and how we put ourselves out in the world. And that's where the biggest changes happen ultimately for us.
Sure.
Thank you so much for your time and everything you've shared. I feel like there's been absolute jewels in here for people to kind of, like you said, nuggets for people to take and just have to sort of digest and hopefully touch some people in a really important way. So thank you so much for giving us your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So I hope your viewers really enjoy this podcast here.
Yeah, thank you.